Now don't make me burp throughout this entire video. Hey guys, Nitsa Gamer here, and yep, you saw the title up there or down there, wherever. This is my review on Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and boy, am I kinda not looking forward to talking about this one. And I'm just gonna say this, if you haven't seen the movie, see it. And no, I'm not saying that because it's good or anything, I'm just saying that I think you'll have a better understanding of what I need to talk about if you've seen the movie for yourself. So if you haven't seen the movie, see it. However, if you're going to see Batman v Superman, don't watch it in 3D, because I personally watched it in 3D and that was a huge mistake, because the 3D was not only made the film dark, but also blurry as well. So yeah, don't see this movie in 3D if you're going to see it, okay? Now, if you really don't care about seeing this movie and you just want to watch my review, or if you have seen it and wonder what my opinions are, well, I think before I start talking about this movie, I'm going to have to talk about the film that came prior, Man of Steel. Now, I am a DC fan and all that. I mean, Batman and Superman are my favorite heroes, but of course, maybe that's because they're the most iconic of the DC universe, and that they're the ones that I've seen the most, aside from Green Arrow from the show Arrow, which is a really great show, and of course Flash from The Flash. Yeah. And yeah, Superman, I really loved the first Richard Donner movie. I liked the second one. The third one was a bore. The fourth one was stupid. Superman Returns, I honestly don't remember much of anything from that movie, so I can't really say much about it. Smallville was pretty much my childhood show. I grew up with Smallville for like 10 seasons, and it is a really great show, with some stupid plots here and there, but it is a great show, and it's one that I'd recommend watching. So, we go to Man of Steel, that was released in 2013. I think it was 2013. I think it was 2013. So, Man of Steel, what do I think of it? I hated it. I mean, yeah, you guys probably already know the song by now, that this is the movie that is known to be the most polarized movie of all time. The movie that people either seem to love, or the movie that everyone seems to hate. And personally, I hated this movie. Now, let me make this very clear. Just because I hate this movie does not mean that everything in the movie is bad. I mean, I despise this movie for a lot of things. I mean, it ruined Jonathan Kent's character. Just, I'm trying not to swear, but they really ruined Jonathan Kent's character. And yeah, if you want to see a better Jonathan Kent, then I would recommend watching the John Snyder Jonathan Kent from Smallville. I mean, granted, he's given 4.5 seasons of development, but he was such the perfect father figure. And while Jonathan was good in the first film, and you do feel sorry for him when you die, I felt no emotion from this movie whatsoever. I didn't care about any of the characters and all that, and this plot was just so incoherent and all that, and it was just a jumbled mess that was more focused on how much destruction it can make to make Michael Bay come or whatever, instead of actually focusing on story and character, which of course this movie was devoid of. Now, in terms of good stuff that I did like in Man of Steel, I do like the majority of the casting, with the exception of Kevin Costner as Jonathan Kent. But pretty much everything about Jonathan Kent I despised in the film. But the rest of the actors do a good job. Do a good job. They have to work with doo-doo, but they do a good job. And yeah, well, some people are kind of like, Amy Adams was like a miscast for Lois Lane. You know what? Almost every single character is kind of a miscast, to be honest. But honestly, I thought Amy Adams did do a good job, at least with what she's given. But yeah, we definitely had better Lois Lanes in other versions. I mean, she was better in the Richard Donner Superman film, at least the first one. And she was also much more better and much more developed in the Smallville version, played by Erica Durance. So yeah. There are some scenes that I do like when Clark goes into the closet and then Martha has to talk through him to balance his abilities and all that. Like, that was a great scene as well. And yeah, there are some great scenes, but as a whole, it was an unbalanced, unfocused mess. And it's amazing just how polarized this movie is, because I cannot understand how people can even like this movie. And the only person that's been able to make me understand why people like Man of Steel was Angry Joe when he did his crossover with the Nostalgia Critic in the Nostalgia Critic review of Man of Steel. And yet he was the only person that at least explained why this movie was good. Whereas everybody else was like, no, it's good. It's good. I like it. Why do you like it? And they never given a reason why. I mean, every friend I've talked to, well, not every friend, but the friends that I've talked to that like this movie never give a reason. And it's like, well, you gotta have like a reason to like it and all that. I mean, sure, we have all our guilty pleasures, but why do you like it? And Angry Joe's like the only person that's at least given me a reason or whatever, but ugh, excuse me, damn you, Coca-Cola. You made me burp in this review. Anyway, so, I've already just recorded for like that long into this review, so how is, Batman v Superman? I mean, as you guys probably know, god damn it, who keeps on sending me text messages? Leave me alone. Okay, so in terms of Batman v Superman, it's okay. Yeah, so you guys may have seen the reviews of this already. It's like 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, and for some reason on every other site it seems to be above average. So yeah, it's interesting that this review gets like 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I will definitely explain why I think that is. I mean, I'm keeping this video non-spoiler and whatever. And yeah, Batman v Superman, in my opinion, is a very flawed film, but it improves upon Man of Steel's flaws. I mean, it has an incoherent story, it lacks character development, there's barely to little no humor in it, and it's quite a joyless film. And of course, these are the same reasons why everybody else hates it. Well, you know what? Those were the exact same problems with Man of Steel. And the thing is that the reason why I think Batman v Superman is better is that even though it has an incoherent story, is that at least the subplots and all that at least has some sort of satire on the political issues or how we would deal with Superman if he were to come to our planet, whether or not if he's like this alien that we should welcome to our planet, whether if he intended to destroy Metropolis or not. I mean, stuff like that was actually really good, and I thought was a really good addition to this movie and all that, because one of the most criticized things about Man of Steel was that there was too much destruction. And while I was fine with the action scenes in Smallville, with the exception of all the product placements that were placed all over the place, like, hey, go to 7-Eleven, hey, U-Haul, hey, Sears, hey, whatever else, IHOP, yeah. In this, I don't think there was really much product placement. I mean, there were product placements. I mean, there was the mention of, like, PBS, CNN, and all that, but I don't really remember much product placement in this one movie. I mean, maybe it's because they do a good job of at least, you know, getting rid of most of the product placement and at least focusing on the story they're telling. And the thing is that because we're cutting between two different main characters, and of course we're cutting to Lex Luthor, Lois, some other characters and whatever that eventually get killed off later on, like, it's all over the place that it doesn't really flow well. And the thing is that if I had to compare this to Man of Steel, this was the exact same problem I had with Man of Steel, but at least to Man of Steel's credit, it at least kept focused on Superman's character, even though, yeah, it would cut to characters like Lois Lane or Zod or whoever else. And yeah, in this film, the characters are definitely better. I mean, the characters in the first film either did nothing or did something, but it was mostly there just for the purpose of destruction or whatever. But in Batman v Superman, at least there is some sort of character motivation and all that. At least something that makes the characters at least do something rather than stay useless. I mean, Lois, besides finding out Clark's secret in the first film, she was really unneeded in the first film, and she did jack shit in that film. Well, in Batman v Superman, well, she does have to be saved at least twice in this film. It was mostly in understandable situations, and of course it was in situations where she was actually doing something and all that, and, you know, she actually does do stuff in this film, rather than just going, you know what, I'm just gonna put myself in the damsel in distress role because the script told me so, and, yeah, she at least does do something in this film, so Lois Lane is definitely better in this film and all that. And the political satire and all that with whether or not his Superman is good or not is definitely really good. And yeah, I guess I should also address like how Ben Affleck is as Batman. And honestly, I think I'll have to see this movie again in non-3D to really say whether or not if Ben Affleck is like a really great Batman, because in some ways I like Christian Bale more as Bruce Wayne, but at least with Ben Affleck as Batman, I can definitely really buy his Batman. I mean, he is such a great Batman. As Bruce Wayne, he does a good job. As Batman, he does a great job. So yeah, I did not have a problem with Ben Affleck. I mean, even when they mentioned that he was going to play the role, I had no problem whatsoever. And maybe a part of that is because I never seen Daredevil, which I know is a bad movie, but yeah, Ben Affleck does do a good job as Batman, so good job, Ben Affleck, for what you have done in this role. And it's not to say that there are some bits of writing that is kind of painful, like some of Batman's decisions and all that, but the beginning at least makes us understand why he would make these kind of decisions. But yeah, once we get to the big fight between Superman and Batman, which I'll get to later, I guess I should also address the other elephant in the room. The number one casting that got everybody, okay, they're just giving up. They just don't give a crap about this universe. They're just doing whatever they can just for the sake of getting Facebook users to go hashtag Batman vs. Superman and use this emoticon that has the Batman with the Superman logo in the middle. Jesse Eisenberg is Lex Luthor. Now, Lex Luthor, in my opinion, is a good villain in this movie. He's a good villain, and Jesse Eisenberg does a good performance of Lex Luthor. And the thing is that when I first heard that he was going to be Lex Luthor, I was like, let me just check the calendar, make sure it's not April Fool's. No, it's not April Fool's. This can't be real! I mean, what the hell? And the thing is that Jesse Eisenberg does do a good job with what he's given, and the thing is that I can't entirely defend Lex Luthor in this movie, because Lex Luthor, he's a good villain in my opinion, but in terms of like his motivation and all that, like they do keep true to the fact that his father was teaching him Greek mythology and how he uses Greek mythology into, you know, the current setting of where he stands between him as man and then Superman as God and all that. I mean, they even played a lot of Greek mythology stuff in the Smallville series. I don't really remember much of it in any other renditions, but that's because I haven't seen all the renditions of Superman with Lex Luthor in it, but at least they got that part right. The only thing about Lex Luthor that I absolutely hated in this movie is for the fact that they tried to make him a fun character. And the thing is that I can see why Zack Snyder picked Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, because he didn't want, you know, someone that was like really intimidating to be Lex Luthor. He wanted someone who could at least have fun with the role and all that. And the thing is that I guess you could say that when he has fun with the role, it's really just him like talking to other people and just trying to show himself as this innocent man that is trying to make a point and whatever, but I don't know. There are even some scenes where he's kind of like a little loony in a way, which is definitely not what Lex Luthor was. I mean, the guy was insane and he's quite the psychopath for sure, but the way he's portrayed in this movie, he's way too loony in my opinion, and any time where he has to be awkward actually does come off as awkward, and honestly, it doesn't work for his character. And this, I don't blame Jesse Eisenberg for this at all. What Jesse Eisenberg does, he does a good job at, and he does well with what he's given. So, yeah, in terms of Jesse Eisenberg being cast as Lex Luthor, it's still a miscast in my opinion, but I think the problem with Lex Luthor is how he's personally written as opposed to just Jesse Eisenberg playing him and all that. I mean, same thing with Ben Affleck as Batman. There are some choices that Batman makes in this movie that I don't really agree with, or it's kind of just rushed in, but again, you can't necessarily blame Ben Affleck for this, and yeah, well, it's definitely not the most redeeming role, say like Ryan Reynolds when he went from like Green Lantern to Deadpool. He does really well in this role, and I can definitely say in terms of performance, Batman is a redeeming role for Ben Affleck, for sure. And yeah, that's pretty much what I think of the casting for the most part. I mean, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman is really great, and when we finally see her kicking ass, she does a really great job. And yeah, I'm trying to think of who else to mention. I think that's pretty much it in terms of casting. I mean, we finally get to see more of Perry White in this, and Lawrence Fishburne definitely does do a good Perry White. I mean, he barely got angry in the first film, like in Man of Steel, where he's kind of like, you know, let's make it three-way since you're so willing to agree with me. Whereas in this film, he actually does get angry, like legitimately angry, when Clark is not, you know, covering sports or anything like that. So that kind of stuff is really good when it comes to Perry White. And we do get to see more of Jenny Olsen, I think her name is. She's kind of the female replacement for Jimmy Olsen in this new universe. And she's in it again, and she doesn't really do much. She's more of a background character. But then again, Jimmy Olsen was kind of a background character in Superman as well. So, yeah, so I'm trying to think of anything else to talk about. The thing is that the plot is really incoherent, and the scenes go by so fast. Like, I'm not kidding. The scenes go by so fast, like, it's kind of like, okay, we gotta fit in 2 hours and 21 minutes. We got Batman, we got Superman, we got Doomsday. Oh, and if you didn't know Doomsday was in this, well, that's not really a spoiler if you haven't seen the second trailer. And they're throwing so much at you that there's not enough room for any emotional or character development. Like, you're trying to get really emotionally invested into Bruce Wayne, or you're trying to get emotionally invested in the relationship between Lois Lane or Clark Kent, and you just can't, because the scene goes by so fast. Like, they're constantly just spewing exposition at you, and it's just going by so fast that it's so hard to follow. And yeah, that's definitely a huge problem. And whenever it cuts to a moment where it's like, okay, we can finally have the characters relax, maybe we'll have a little bit of time where we can show an emotional moment. Oh, no time about that. Let's go to the next scene and talk about some other exposition. And it's just, oh my god, anything between the opening of this movie to the fight between Batman and Superman, there are scenes that I'm probably forgetting, and that's a pretty bad sign, because at least with Man of Steel, I can remember at least almost every scene, but not every scene. I mean, Man of Steel still had an incoherent plot, but in terms of, like, developmental payoff, I think Batman v Superman does a better job, because at least it's building up to something, whereas Man of Steel is kind of just doing it for the purpose of, let's just show what visual effects can do now and what next-gen Superman can do and all that. And because it was more focused on destruction and all that, Man of Steel just failed on so many levels that it didn't care about the character, it just cared more about what new things it can do. And congratulations! You can make the fights a lot more realistic, you can have Superman break sound barriers, but that's not what makes a good movie, guys. And yeah, it just really pisses me off that movies focus more on what can be new as opposed to what can be new and challenging. And I guess for the people that like Man of Steel, they kind of see the incoherent stuff as challenging, but really, what was the purpose of Jonathan Kent's character? I'm sorry, Man of Steel just destroyed me. I just don't understand how people can like that movie. But regardless, Batman v Superman, again, the scenes go by so fast that there's not enough time for us to connect with the characters. And there's dream sequences in this movie, mostly by Bruce Wayne himself, which I'll probably get into the spoiler corners, that don't really add up to anything, with the exception of maybe 2 scenes, but really don't add up to anything. So, it's a really messy movie and all that, and honestly, if I were to be honest, it's a bad movie. It's a bad movie, but it's at least better than Man of Steel. Like, I can at least gain some bit of entertainment from this movie instead of Man of Steel, where I was kind of like, yeah, I want this to end now because they just totally ruined everything for me. Whereas at least Batman v Superman, I wanted to at least know where it was going to build up to, and even though it's not the best build-up, you know what? At least it's better that it builds up to something, and it's better for it to at least fail than to go nowhere at all. And, yeah, by the time we get to the Batman and Superman fight, what was I like? Well, I can assure you that the best part of the entire fight is pretty much usually I only finish this much of popcorn, but I actually finished this much by the end of the movie. Yeah, that's how bad this movie is that I was more entertained by my own popcorn than I was the movie itself. And the fight between Batman and Superman does have a lot of great build-up to it, but then once it gets to the actual fight, it only lasts for like 6 minutes. 6 freaking minutes! And the fight itself is very underwhelming. It's kind of like the Superman 2 fight if it was, of course, you know, updated to nowadays effects. I mean, the fight is so slow, takes place in one building, only lasts 6 minutes, and you know what? They really had no reason to fight anyway. So yeah, if you're going into this movie expecting a really epic fight between Batman and Superman, expect to be disappointed. They're going to be building themselves up to it a lot, but expect it to be very disappointing. And yes, I should also address the other elephant in the room, Doomsday. Wow, whoever was behind the second trailer probably got shot in the head or something, because they pretty much did reveal the entire movie. I mean, even though Zack Snyder said, no, the second trailer didn't really reveal everything. Well, you know what? It did. It really did. After Superman and Batman say, okay, truce, our mothers have the same first names, it just literally goes back to Lex Luthor just continuing to spout out mythology and all that, that, again, works, but the way he does it is just so painful and all that. And once Doomsday arrives, again, I can't really get much into the spoilers, but when Doomsday arrives, it's unneeded. He could have been used in a later film like the Justice League, and for the fact that they introduced Doomsday now was just a huge disappointment. And honestly, I'll get into more about Doomsday in the spoiler corner. So, yeah, Batman v Superman is a very, very messy movie. So, is there anything that I like in this movie? Well, as I mentioned before, most of the performances in this movie are really good. I mean, the actors that we got for Man of Steel are still great, and the new actors are really good. I mean, even Jesse Eisenberg, I mean, even though this is a pretty poor rendition of Lex Luthor, Jesse Eisenberg still does a great job with what he is given. I mean, he doesn't ruin the role. He just embraces what he's given, and you know what? He's not a bad actor. He does a good job. So, good on you, Jesse Eisenberg. Good on you. Oh, and also Jeremy Irons. That's another actor I forgot to mention. Jeremy Irons as Alfred is definitely not the best Alfred we had, but he was definitely one of the better characters. In fact, he was able to bring up at least 2 funny lines in this movie, which I'm not going to reveal in this, and I probably won't remember in the spoiler corner, but there were at least 2 lines from him that did legitimately make me laugh. So, yeah, Alfred is good in this movie and all that. Not the best Alfred we had, but he is a good Alfred. And, yeah, another positive is that, well, the majority of the movie is spouting exposition at you, and it can be hard to follow. I think the best parts of this movie is actually the beginning, or the opening and the ending, the opening and the ending. Yeah, those are the best parts of the movie. I mean, I'm not saying that the middle is god-awful, it's just unbalanced and all that. It has the same problems with Man of Steel, but at least it improves a slight bit on Man of Steel's flaws and all that, by not making the characters totally heartless in any way. And yeah, by the time we get to the opening, like the opening literally begins with the parents getting axed off, like Bruce's parents getting axed off, and the way it's shot actually reminds me of the Watchmen opening and all that, which was also another movie that Zack Snyder directed, and the opening to Watchmen is one of my favorite openings in movies ever, like top 3. And, yeah, the way he shoots it is actually really stylized. And what sucks is that since I watched it in 3D, the blurriness and the focus, like the shots that get out of focus, gets really distracting. So, yeah, if you want to see how great this opening is, see it in 2D, because if you see it in 3D, you're just going to go, ugh. The 3D in this movie is just awful. But yeah, the opening I thought was actually really dang good. And even just the whole opening with Bruce going into Metropolis while it's being invaded by the Kryptonians. Like, again, I absolutely hated how much destruction they made in Metropolis, because it was overdone, it overstayed its welcome, and it added no emotional investment. And even one stupid line from Jenny Olsen going, "He saved us, even though I don't know who saved us." However, the whole scene with Batman going through Metropolis and all that, trying to save the people that he knows, as well as find this one little kid's mother and all that, you know what? It actually legitimately got me emotionally invested. This is like the only moment where I did get somewhat emotionally invested, was the whole thing with Bruce running through Metropolis. The ending, however, should have been the most emotional moment of the movie. And without revealing what it is, it's also really great because it actually shows how society can get better when it tries to give credit to a hero and whatever, or someone who is different or considered godlike and whatever. And the way it's all done is actually really well done and all that. And yeah, I really did like the ending to this movie, as well as the opening and all that. Whereas the rest of the movie is very rushed, it's throwing exposition at you, there's barely any emotional development, no character development. But it does have some highlights, and some of the highlights I honestly think is best if I talk about in the spoiler corner. So, yeah, by the end of this, you probably think that I really hated this movie, and honestly, I don't dislike this movie. It's by all means a very bad movie for sure, but I think it's better than Man of Steel, and it does improve on Man of Steel's flaws. Now, the reason why I think it's at 30% on Rotten Tomatoes is because, well, Man of Steel is at 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that was a polarized film because people were quite split on, oh, this is a really great rendition of Superman, good job, Zack Snyder, whereas the other half is like, you just ruined Superman and the story is just all over the place. And you know what? Because those problems do carry over to Batman v Superman, but for us who hated Man of Steel actually see Batman v Superman's flaws as slight improvements, maybe that is why we see it as a slight bit better and therefore don't hate it as much as the people that loved Man of Steel. So for the people that loved Man of Steel but absolutely despised this film, I honestly think that's part of the reason why it's so critically panned, is because of the half that actually really loved Man of Steel. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people who love Man of Steel and really love Batman v Superman, but I think the majority who loved Man of Steel are hating on Batman v Superman, and because they're critically panning it to as much as they can, which is very funny because the way they're critically panning it is the exact same opinions that we had on Man of Steel. And because those same flaws with the incoherent story, lack of character development carries over into this film, Batman v Superman, but they do improve a slight bit, adjustments and stuff to the plot and characters. I think it's also a reason why we don't hate it as much, but we also acknowledge it as a bad film. So because of that, it actually gets a lower rating. So even though I do find Batman v Superman to be better than Man of Steel, it's still a bad movie, but there are some legit good moments and all of that in this movie and all that. And yeah, if I have to be honest, Man of Steel, in my opinion, gets a 3 out of 10. So a 3 out of 10 for Man of Steel. So in terms of Batman v Superman gets a 4 out of 10. It's a very bad movie for the most part, but it definitely has redeeming qualities, good performances, a good opening and ending, but the rest of the movie is very sloppy for the most part, with some great ideas and themes on the political issues of accepting Superman into society and all that, and just vigilantes in general. And it's a very flawed movie, and would I recommend it? Well, if you honestly want to see it just for the sake of, at least knowing what the story is behind it, I would recommend seeing it. But if you're someone who just can't handle mediocrity, then you're not going to like it. But if you're someone who doesn't care about story or character development, and you're just there to see some action scenes and all that, you'll probably like this movie fine. As a whole, it's a very, very flawed movie. But I did enjoy some moments, and there are some aspects that I have to acknowledge was improved on with what Man of Steel has left us off with. And in many ways, I think this is an improvement over Man of Steel, but this is by no means a good movie or anything. So yeah, Batman v Superman is a bad movie, but at least I enjoyed it somewhat more than Man of Steel. So yeah, So yeah, take it for what it's worth, and I'll see you guys in the spoiler corners of Batman v Superman. Goodbye.